Welcome to the overview of the application process specific to the Programs of All-Inclusive Care for the Elderly, or PACE program. The Division of Medicare Advantage Operations is responsible for the PACE application process. This includes both initial PACE applications for new PACE organizations, as well as service area expansion applications for active PACE organizations seeking to expand their approved geographic service area and/or add a new PACE center or centers. Displayed on the screen are the items that we are covering. In addition, an overview of application requirements will be provided, including key reminders as you prepare to submit the required application material. Please note that initial applicants must also submit a Part D application that addresses prescription drug requirements. This presentation includes information related to the PACE Part D application, including tips for initial PACE applicants. Also, see a separate presentation titled HPMS PACE Application Training for information regarding accessing and navigating the Health Plan Management System, or HPMS, for purposes of initiating and submitting a PACE application. These presentations are posted to the CMS YouTube page and may also be found on the CMS website at https://www.cms.gov/medicare/health-plans/PACE/overview under related links. We will begin with some basic information regarding the PACE application. The PACE program is governed by regulations at 42 CFR Part 460, which includes application requirements. PACE applications are accepted by CMS on a quarterly basis, generally the last Friday in March, June, September, and December. The specific submission dates may be found on the PACE website shown on this slide. The application itself is largely attestation-based and is essentially the same for both initial applicants and active PACE organizations that seek to expand their approved geographic service area, open a new center site within the currently approved service area, or seek both a geographic expansion and a new center site. The type of application dictates the CMS review periods, which we will speak to in a moment. The application requires documentation that, in large part, is required content of the three-way program agreement between the PACE organization, the applicable state administering agency, or SAA, which is the delegated state agency responsible for PACE and CMS. The program agreement is assembled and executed upon approval of an initial application. In addition, applicable information provided through an application is used to update the existing program agreement upon approval of service area expansion applications. Much of the required documentation includes policies and procedures, as well as defined information that is to be provided by the state, that in part demonstrates its support for the application. The Notice of Intent to Apply, or NOIA process, is for those that intend to submit an initial PACE application. It enables applicants to obtain a contract number and gain access to HPMS. Please note that a NOIA is not required of existing operational PACE organizations that seek to submit an expansion application. However, expansion applicants should inform their regional office account managers of any plans to submit a service area expansion application. It is essential that an initial PACE applicant start the NOIA submission early in the quarter in which the applicant intends to submit an application. Applicants should submit the completed NOIA to the PACE portal noted on this slide during the first month of the quarter in which the applicant intends to submit the application. In addition to the actual NOIA form, quarterly application submission dates and other relevant dates are included on CMS's website at the link found on this slide. In addition to the NOIA, entities that wish to submit an initial PACE application must obtain a CMS user ID to access the HPMS system. For instructions, review the HPMS memo dated November 13, 2019. A PACE applicant must have the support of the state in which it is applying to operate a PACE program and is expected to follow the state-specific application process as the state application process varies by state. At the end of this presentation is a list of resources, including a link to applicable state websites that may include helpful information regarding the PACE program and requirements. Among other required documentation, applicants must upload a signed and dated state assurance form. This is a template document that is to be completed and signed by the State Administering Agency, or SAA, which is the designated state agency responsible for PACE. The regulatory provision cited requires initial PACE applicants to obtain assurance from the SAA that the state considers the entity to be qualified to be a PACE organization and is willing to enter into a PACE program agreement with the entity, or, for active PACE organizations that seek to expand, that the state is willing to amend the PACE program agreement to include the new site and/or expand the PACE organization's service area. With the exception of the completed state readiness review associated with the PACE Center site, which may be submitted as part of a response to a CMS request for additional information, all required state documentation must be included as part of application submissions that include a new PACE Center. Please note these important reminders based on our experience reviewing PACE applications. The first is that applications must be created, completed, and submitted within the same quarter. We have had some issues with applicants initiating an application in one quarter but delaying final submission until a subsequent quarter. Depending on the timing, this has resulted in applications that do not reflect current requirements in terms of attestations and/or uploads. Please be sure to initiate and submit the application within the same quarter. Failure to do so will result in removal of the application. Please also be sure to carefully read the document upload descriptions included in the application to be sure all applicable information is included, aligns with regulatory requirements, and is presented in accordance with CMS's instructions. Your careful attention to the upload requirements will limit the need to subsequently address deficiencies identified in a request for additional information from CMS. Please ensure the PACE Center address and service area information is consistent both on the state attestations and assurances document and in HPMS. We cannot emphasize enough how important it is to ensure that this information is accurate and is consistently represented. Please be sure to follow the instructions included within the download templates associated with the application within HPMS. In addition, for the program agreement, please include the appendix in the header, which is required content for the program agreement. We encourage you to check the regulatory requirements associated with any regulatory citation to ensure the information you provide is compliant. Much of the documentation required of the application is also required content of the program agreement that will ultimately be executed or updated for initial PACE applicants and SAE applicants, respectively. In addition, please be cautious and ensure that you are uploading the correct documents. For example, there is a separate template for voluntary disenrollment and involuntary disenrollment. Some applicants have submitted them combined as one document. Other applicants have uploaded the same document twice. Please note that instead of PDF documents, we prefer that applicants provide the original Word or Excel document. In addition to an organizational chart as part of the legal entity and organizational structure part of the application, please provide a written description of the PACE organization's organizational structure. We note that if the state administering agency uses the rate methodology, it must be current and align with the rate method included in the approved state plan. Also, note that CMS will not review extraneous documents that are not requested or required as part of the application. Finally, we want to reinforce that active PACE organizations may not submit a service area expansion application if an application is currently pending. You must wait until CMS has made a final determination regarding the pending application before submitting another as part of a subsequent quarterly cycle, so please plan accordingly when submitting an application. There has been some confusion among new PACE applicants regarding answering two attestations where NA is an option. These attestations include 1. Applicant agrees to provide CMS a copy of the signed subordinated guaranteed debt attestation form for each financial reporting period if applicable, and 2. Applicant agrees to provide any reserve requirements and other financial requirements set by the state in which the applicant proposes to operate its PACE program and any supporting documentation necessary to demonstrate how the applicant meets these requirements if applicable. To clarify, applicants without subordinated guaranteed debt or reserve requirements or other financial requirements established by the applicable state should respond NA to applicable attestations. Finally, just a reminder that expansion applicants are only expected to provide documentation if requested as part of a request for additional information. As mentioned earlier, the PACE application is comprised of a number of attestations in which the applicant must agree to comply with specific regulatory requirements and satisfy document upload requirements. Applicants must respond to all attestations in the automated application and upload the required documentation in accordance with the upload descriptions in the application and applicable README template files. Some sections of the application require several files to be uploaded. In these sections, applications must zip the files together before uploading. A signed state assurance document must be submitted with the application regardless of type, that is, both initial and expansion applications, and must be included when the applicant hits the Final Submit button. Applicants must hit the Final Submit button on the specified quarterly date, which will result in a formal submission of the application and start the applicable review period. Please note, you are able to start an application earlier in the quarter, but you must hit the Final Submit button to officially submit the application on the designated quarterly date. One final note. Applications may be submitted on the quarterly submission date by 8 p.m. Eastern Time. This is consistent with other CMS applications and allows all applicants a full day to finalize and officially submit the application. We want to reinforce that applicants need to hit the Final Submit button on the submission date in order to transmit the application to CMS. We continue to have some issues with this, so please be aware that this is the final step in the process. You should receive a confirmation once the application has been submitted. We will now provide additional detail regarding the Request for Additional Information part of the application review process. We note that an initial PACE application and expansion applications submitted by active PACE organizations that include both a geographic expansion as well as an additional PACE site are subject to a 90-day review clock. Expansion applications that include either a geographic expansion or an additional PACE site are subject to 45-day review clocks. This means that on or before the end of the designated review deadline, applicants can expect CMS to either make a final determination regarding the application or issue a request for additional information. If CMS needs additional information based on the first review period, the applicant will receive an HPMS-generated request for additional information or an RAI before the first review period ends. An RAI will ask that certain documentation be resubmitted to address deficiencies identified upon initial CMS review. For example, there may be policy and procedure documents that do not comply with regulatory requirements. Please note that we will expect all required documentation to comply with current regulatory requirements, and we will identify as deficiencies information that does not align with the current regulations. This is very important, since much of the documentation will subsequently be included within the final executed or updated program agreement, which serves as the contract between CMS, the SAA, and the PACE organization. As we mentioned before, an RAI typically indicates that the State Readiness Review, SRR, was not uploaded as part of an initial application or a service area expansion application that includes a PACE Center site. Receipt of the HPMS notification will signal the end of the first clock's review period. The second review clock, which will again be a 45-day or 90-day period depending on type of application, will begin when the applicant submits a complete response to the RAI. When an applicant is ready to submit a complete response to the RAI, applicants must notify CMS by submitting a request to the PACE portal. In response, CMS will notify the applicant that the gates are open for uploading the required documents within HPMS. It is important to note that this is not an opportunity for the applicant to make material changes to the application. Any material changes, such as a change in the location of the PACE Center or the addition of zip codes or counties, would require a new application. Once documentation in response to the RAI is uploaded and the applicant hits the Final Submit button, the second 45-day or 90-day review clock, as applicable, begins. Importantly, per regulation, if more than 12 months lapse between the date of initial submission of the application and the entity's response to the CMS RAI, the entity must update the application to provide the most current information and materials related to the application. This means that in addition to addressing the additional information requested by CMS, the applicant must submit all other application-specific documentation that may have changed during the interim period. We also note that depending on the nature of those changes and updates due to the lag in responding to an RAI, there may be circumstances in which the applicant will be required to submit a completely new application. For example, if there is a change in the legal entity that is applying to become a PO. If this requirement is prompted, we will work with you to determine what is needed and communicate next steps specific to your application. PACE applicants intending to offer the Part D benefit must complete the PACE Part D application as well. The Part D application is submitted in HPMS. The application itself, along with supporting documentation, is posted on the CMS webpage indicated on the slide. The same deadlines apply to the Part D application as to the rest of the PACE application. The PACE Part D application consists of a series of attestations about the PACE applicant's compliance with Part D requirements and several uploads related to organizational background and contracting. CMS provides the contract templates and contract crosswalk documents for download from the application module in HPMS as well as on the CMS webpage cited in this slide. The next two slides describe important tips for the contracting section. First, be sure to enter all Part D subcontractors in the Part D data section of Basic Contract Management in HPMS. CMS uses this information to determine which contracts should be submitted in the PACE Part D application. Second, applicants must submit contracts for all contractors performing Part D functions, including negotiating rebates, contracting with pharmacies, and providing long-term care pharmacy services. Note that if another organization, such as a parent organization, is contracting with a first-tier downstream or related entity on the applicant's behalf, the application must include a contract between the applicant and that other organization. Third, applications must include the contract template that the PACE organization will use to contract with long-term care pharmacies. This template is usually provided by the organization's pharmacy benefit manager or PBM. If you plan to contract with only one pharmacy and have a contract in place with that pharmacy, you may submit that contract instead of a template, but you should use the LTC Pharmacy Contract Template crosswalk. Fourth, we strongly advise making the review process easier by ensuring that page numbers referenced in the crosswalk reflect the PDF file page numbers for the uploaded contract or template. It is difficult for CMS to find the required provisions if they are not properly cited in the crosswalks. Finally, all contracts and contract templates must comply with all requirements outlined in the relevant contract crosswalk. Every contract, but not contract templates, must reference the applicant, even if the applicant is not a direct party, and be executed by both parties. Draft contracts are not acceptable. Many of you will have to respond to Part D deficiencies identified in the RAI. If you are responding to an RAI more than a year after you first submitted the application, you must either submit new contracts or submit a letter or other document signed by the parties indicating that the contracts are still in effect for the required term. Please contact the Part D team at the address indicated with questions about the application or your RAI. This will help ensure that your application meets requirements. We have a number of resources available to PACE applicants. CMS's PACE website includes pertinent information related to the PACE application and process, including the NOIA form, the current paper application, key application dates for the current year, a participant rights template that applicants may want to refer to for their participant rights documentation required as part of the application, as well as other relevant information for applicants. We also note that a link to this video, as well as the HPMS PACE application training video, is posted to the CMS YouTube page and is available through the Related Links part of the CMS PACE webpage identified on this screen. This concludes our training. If you have any questions, please submit them to the PACE portal at the address identified on this screen. Thank you.